everybody, it's Anthony Brogdon, the show main man on the 1 and 2s. We jamming today, tonight, in the morning, in the afternoon, wherever you watch this, because I got a smooth guy on the channel today. He got a thought process that we ought to hear of how he, sees the world and includes Black history in this component. I'm Anthony Brogdon, and I bring this history, these thoughts, these facts to you via my guests so that you can be inspired, educated, and maybe in some respects entertained. So hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. It's free. Don't cost you no money. Don't ask no information. All that it does is let me know you like me, because I like you already. And I appreciate that. And we over 1,400 subscribers, and we're growing every day. We're moving expeditiously every day. Hit the like button on this video. You're going to like it a lot. Watch out. My man got a backdrop and whatnot. He's serious about his game. Hit the notifications bell so that you get a ding, a shock, a smoke signal, your lights flicker, whatever, that there's new content on Strong Inspirations. And tell somebody about this. Please don't keep it to yourself. Share the link. Just mention to somebody, hey, there's a channel out there on YouTube, Strong Inspirations, where people give it to you straight, no chaser. It is a resource of Black history, as what you will hear today with this gentleman on my show. He's sharp too. He got a shirt and tie on. He ready. He ain't playing. He's serious about his game. Let me tell you, my man called me quite a few times saying, come on, man, I want to come on. I got some thoughts that I got to share with your viewers. And I got no problem with it, my brothers and my sisters. Just a few things. Did you see the video I did with a lady who talks about herbal teas and the properties of them as we delve into some wellness? Look for that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy who talks about healthy eating and urban farming? Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the lady who helps the Black farmers? And she's committed to a cause, icon type person. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the lady who she sets up those marches in Mississippi? She did one of them where the racist showed up with a gun. She said, I wasn't scared. It wasn't my time. Nothing happened, and even changed the heart, at least so to speak, of some of those racists who showed up. Watch that video. We got them. We over 400 strong, and new ones are added weekly. So that's Strong Inspirations. Now, as you might know, I got a movie out. It's a documentary called Business in the Black. It's streaming on Amazon. I got a book out called Black Business Book. It is the #1 Black business history book on the market. There is no other book like mine. It's on my website, businessintheblack.net. Let me tell y'all something, as I am the host of the show, I've expanded my reach and I do public speaking. So if you need somebody to come in to inspire your audience and to educate them with facts like slaves, and I name them, who own businesses and how wealthy they became, and so much more, I talk about. I try to change the mindset of how we look towards one another and our history. And I give you examples to make you proud. So, you can contact me again at the website, businessintheblack.net. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word. I really like the word strong. Everything I do has got some strong in it. And so strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to my guest today. He's a strong man. So come on, brother, introduce yourself. We're going to get it on here for a moment. Thank you.
Sure. My name is J.L. Lazoo, and I am here because I wanted to talk to you guys about something that we don't really hear much about, actually, almost perhaps never heard about it. And that I'm going to use a term to explain what I'm about to tell you. That in America, since we've been here, African Americans, Black people, we've actually been two nations. It doesn't. There's no actual discussions about the idea that there's actually two different types of Black people in this country. That's one term we use it. It's actually two nations, two different types of Black people who have different views in terms of how we should be as a people. And we're split on that. It's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of who we are.
Okay.
So that's basically what it's the overall of my discussion today.
All right. Well, let me. I don't mean no disrespect. Let me stop you there because I do it with all my guests. I got to ask a couple questions about yourself, so people get to know you, individually. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Florida.
Okay.
I'm a Floridian, and I lived in several states throughout the United States. Mississippi is one of the states that I've also had residence.
Well, what city? What city in Florida?
Gulfport.
What? Gulfport?
Gulfport, Mississippi.
Okay, but in Florida, you were raised in what city?
Oh, I'm sorry, Orlando, Florida.
Orlando.
Yes.
Did you grow up in a Black neighborhood?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty much.
Okay.
A lot of Black people there.
There was all Blacks at your grade school and high school? Did you a little integrated or what?
It was integrated, of course. And when I say integrated, even though there are Black people there, not all Black people in Florida are from America. So we have Black people from different countries living in Florida, particularly in the Caribbean Black people.
Sure. What do you know? In your town, is there Black history stories of any note that most people might not know
of? Not particularly.
Okay.
Just no.
Yeah. What was the Black side of town called? What was its name?
Little Haiti. Little Haiti.
Little Haiti. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of Haitians.
Oh, so because of Haitian community.
Yeah, a lot of Haitians. Absolutely.
How did Haitians get there? Do you know that? And why there?
Yeah, so Haiti is I don't know all the complete history of modern day Haiti, but it's right by not far from the United States in Florida. So there's opportunities in Florida that they can't have where they live in their homelands. A lot of them, migrate to Florida. Not just them. We have Jamaicans and just different people from the Caribbean living in Florida because of more opportunities. And of course, even those who usually, when I talk to a lot of the Haitians in particular, they came here basically to visit family, things of that nature. Over time, they got really, I guess, accustomed to America and decided to move to America. So that's been my experience.
When you played with Haitian boys and girls in grade school.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, sure.
Is there a different dynamic in their culture of way of thinking or something like that you noticed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a certain sense of pride of their country that it's pretty strong out there. Of course, they have their own cuisine, completely different than what we have in America. And there's a sense of familyhood. Family is a top priority for those people, more so than we find here in America.
Did you, as you noticed that, did that make you think why we're not that way, or you kind of embraced that attitude and maybe said, I wish we were that way more so?
Yeah, evidently, yeah, that's definitely a thought that we as Black people in America do think about, because we are like on the opposite end of where they are, and a lot has to do because they have more autonomy in their home where they originally originated from. So in America, there's more issues that prevent us from attaining that. But yeah, clearly, um, that's a real discussion among Black Americans for sure.
When did you learn Black history? How did you become who you are?
My family. That's part. Yeah, I learned at home. That's what I've got my first education is at home. Family members, my grandmother on my mother's side. She really was my first Black history teacher, if you want to call it that. Educated me about her family and who they were. That, yeah, I learned from her.
Uh, you were astute enough to want to hear these stories. You sat beside him at the table and said, "Hey, what's this all about?"
Yeah, not necessarily. I didn't initiate it, but they initiated, and they told me I should know about who we are and about your family. So that was something that I didn't basically start the conversation. This is something that they wanted to
Yeah.
teach me.
Is there somebody that you have followed or read about that got you to thinking the way you think?
Yeah, a number of people, I would say. A couple of people that you probably never heard about, which I'm going to be talking about them.
Yeah.
One in particular, man by the name of Cato, Kato. That was
Okay.
the biggest one.
You read a book about him. What's his story?
Okay. So we're going to dive into this.
Yeah, yeah, we read. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I, we learn history. You read books, and in school they give you a very limited number of, history of Black people. So I was inquisitive, and I started picking up books, and I ran into this one man named Cato, Kato, and it goes back to the year 1660. I didn't know much about him. All I know is, I read about these rebellions that Black people were going to. They call them uprisings or uh, slave revolts, things of that nature, insurrections, some of them are called. And and I kept reading, saying, "Oh, this is quite interesting." And I ran into this one gentleman by the name of Cato, and he, at that time, America didn't even exist, but they were living in the same place under British rule. It's a territory of the United States. And he came up with the statement that they were promised a homeland. They meaning, whoever was with them, whoever those Africans were. And he said that we're going to establish our homeland here.
In America.
Well, what we call America today, but
Yeah, yeah.
America didn't exist in 1660.
So
But yeah,
that's Cato's time, the 1660s.
yeah, in the year 1660, yeah.
Okay, but there was slavery during that time.
He was a slave, yeah.
He was a slave. Okay,
Yes, he
so
was.
yeah, so what happened to Cato? What's his story?
We don't know the detail. That's pretty scant. There's not a whole lot about him. And they use the word uh, Mahali. Mahali is a Kiswahili word, uh, meaning promised land. So they felt that God had promised them a homeland here. They called it here. That's what they said here, because they didn't know. I guess they didn't know exactly where they were, so they just said here. I'm like, what? God promised them. So that started a whole journey for me in terms of investigating what all that meant. So basically, it came to realization that I know, and this is something that almost most people, well, I won't say most, but a good deal of Black people are aware that there were many slave revolts throughout American history.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, but never did I ever make a connection about what that meant and how did, why were there so many? Uh, I've there's been over a couple of hundred revolts over that time frame, and it all initiated during the time of this man named Kano. That was one of the, maybe not the first, but one of the early ones that got started in 1660.
So he led a revolt.
Yeah.
How successful was he? Did he kill a lot of people? Did he free himself? Whatever.
Well, it was a typical revolt that had minimal results, but the idea never fled. It was always part of them. Yeah, they never attained it. They didn't succeed at, actually, there was no success in terms of what their goal was. However, they had some, I wouldn't even call it a war. It's just, call them skirmishes, or, small battles. And no, they didn't survive. They didn't survive at all. And there was few casualties in the opposition. But here's the thing. This was something that he sparked something, that sentiment that, it was promised to us. They felt that God had promised them a homeland here, wherever here was. And it started to go year after year after year. So the big picture is this: these people that came up with that idea in 1660 started this movement here, and it ended up being a war, an actual war. And what I mean by a war, they did not give up on this notion of homeland, in the Kiswahili, promised land, mahali. That's the word that they use. And you see it in all those insurrections or rebellions. They're all saying the same thing, exactly the same thing. Let me move you forward to the 1800s. Nat Turner. Most people, he's probably the most well-known rebellion, right?
Sure.
Who was he fighting for? When they asked him, "Where are you going?" He was on the move. He said, "Where are you going, Nat Turner?" His word, Jerusalem. Okay. Before him, 1821, I think it was, in South Carolina. Perhaps the most largest movements of number of people that got together. The number was close to over 10,000 people gathered to form an army to take over the state of South Carolina.
Now you're talking about Black people doing this.
Correct.
All right. And
this was by a man that people call Denmark Vesey.
Yes.
He called it, but that's what he was called. But his actual name was Telemaque. And Telemaque gathered 10,000 Black people in South Carolina. And what was he doing? He was forming a land for our people, which he said he called it the promised land. Those were his words. He was a preacher, by the way, just like Nat Turner was a preacher. And you go back to the year 1799, and in Virginia, a man which people call Gabriel Prosser led a movement just as well. And his movement was before the Haitian liberation took place, before the Haitians gained their nation, 1 year before that, 1799. And again, he was called, they call him Gabriel Prosser, that's his name, but actually that's not his actual name. That was the name of his slave owner that he was attached to that name, but he called himself Samson. And of course, he said, "I'm going to establish a kingdom." And he wanted to become the king of the kingdom that he was going to establish in Virginia for Black people. And I use these three messages of these people because they're the most common. Most people are familiar with those three. Right. But when you go back through history, it's recorded to at least 200 battles took place. And they were all saying the same thing. The name was either Jerusalem, Promised Land, some called it Canaan, some called it Israel, all these different names with the same sentiment. And the battles went on. When I looked at the history of these continual battles between 1660 and 1860, these battles never stopped. Even though people made an attempt to attain this goal, of course, it was never attained. But the following year, between 1660 and 1860, there were rebellions, revolts ongoing for every consecutive year, uninterrupted.
Right.
For 200 years, they fought based on this one notion that they were going to form a homeland here, promising them what they call the promised land. And it was remarkable when you look at this, that this was all a movement. Most of the people who led the movements were preachers. Most of the leaders were preachers.
Yeah.
It was a religious-based movement on religious ideology. And it was ongoing. They were like relentless. I mean, to me, I was more amazed, not the fact that they actually fought these battles, is that everyone who got involved, year after year, was well aware that there was people before them, the year before that, and years before them that failed, but it didn't prevent them from making their attempt, which is just amazing.
Let me stop you there. So let's say this: you're in America, you are here, but the thing is to say, more we want to rule ourselves, or we just want what the rule that there is to be more just, or is it both?
No, they wanted their own country, a homeland. It almost mimics what the Christian Bible talks about the Jews who were promised a land, almost something like that, a similar sentiment. And they were forming their own nation. That's, they kept calling it by different names, but it all always was connected to this promised land. And Nat Turner, just go down the list. It's just enormous amount of people. And they all did it on that idea, and they did it for 200 years, which basically, when you do that, when you have these battles based on that one principle, and it's done consecutively for year after year for 200 years, this is not, sporadic uprisings or revolts as they put it in the history books. Actually, this was an actual war. This was one war, a war that lasted for 200 years.
Sure. Let me ask you, what was the most successful of these? Was there one that it lasted a couple months?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or something like that?
The last battle. So it started in 1660 and it ended in 1860. The last one was a successful one. And here's the irony. And this when I read it, it's incredible. But the gentleman that starts this whole thing goes by the name of Cato. The gentleman that ended the war in 1860 also went by the name of Cato.
Now, the last gentleman, where was his at?
In Texas.
In Texas.
Yes. And so his is the one that we have the most information about, because it was probably maybe because it was the most relevant, but it was of all the battles, it was the most impactful that they actually got. They didn't get their nation, but they got a lot out of it. The others had very, very little results for what they put into in terms of efforts. So Cato's, I can go into detail because there's a lot of information about Cato that you can read about him in 1860.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Yes. So in 1860, he came up with a plan to go after these people that had our people in servitude for all these years. He was a very wise guy in terms of intelligence, and he decided how shall we fight these people and succeed. And the goal was to hurt them where it hurts them the most, not picking up weapons to go to fights. That wasn't very successful for them. But he said, we're going to go after what's the most valuable thing to them. And that was their wealth. Go after their wealth. So his plan was to destroy the value of their people, which is their plantations and everything else that's in terms of value to them. And he started a movement, and this was in Dallas, Texas. And it had been scheduled to overturn these people according to his plan, and they were going to do it all in one day. They were not going to, this battle was not going to be, a battle that would take much time, but he said we can do it in a single day. And that's what happened. And this happened on the 8th of July.
What did he do?
He gathered up his people. They all got organized. And what they did, just before the sun rose, they started burning every plantation in the city of Dallas, Texas. Burning not just the plantations, burning their residents, their homes, their barns. Everything was going on fire. And when people were waking up, slave owners, they saw their residents on fire. They didn't know what was going on. The reason we know this information, because this is all recorded in the newspapers in Dallas, Texas, and it's in their archives. And you start reading.
Let me stop you there. When you said he gathered his people are slaves. So somehow he's communicating with his slaves and saying, one day I need you to just torch the enslaver's house.
And houses, the properties, the plantations, everything. It was highly organized, a very organized effort by Kano on July 8th, 1860. And here's the reason why it was so successful. It wasn't what I just told you, is what came after that. It's that it was so highly organized that, white people didn't know what was going on, who was doing this. They just know that the city was burning down. The city of Dallas nearly burned down the entire city. And then there were reports were coming in later that it was happening in nearby cities, in Fort Worth, and other towns nearby Dallas. Same situation. Before the day was over, the cities throughout, almost all the major cities throughout the state of Texas, from Dallas way up north, all the way down to the southern part of Texas, which is hit towards Mexico,
right, had
all been burned down. So this was a statewide campaign that he had put together, and nearly it angered all the slave owners. Of course,
some people had to be killed in that process too, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and Cato was number one person to be killed.
Yeah, but I'm talking about some of the white people, because they got caught up in the house, didn't get out in time, that kind of
Absolutely. Thing. Yeah, we don't know the numbers of those, but yeah, they were casualties.
Well, is there a term for this revolt other than his name or something like that?
So here's what happened. The way it was recorded, it was, when I say record, I'm going by the newspaper, because they're the ones that were covering it. So every paper, as they were aware of what was going on, and the journalists were reporting this, they attached the name of the city to the problem. But it was always called the Troubles. That's the word that they would use, the Troubles.
Oh, okay.
The Troubles in Dallas, the Troubles in Fort Worth, it was all called the Troubles. So it went out to the whole state. It was and the reason why this was the most impressive, because it was the first one that was highly organized. It was scheduled for a single day, and it was over an entire state, but not just any state. It was the biggest state in the country.
Yeah, sure. Now, was he enslaved at the time, or he had escaped for his freedom?
They were all slaves.
Okay, so what happened there? How did they figure out it was him who masterminded this, and let's kill this guy?
Well, he was already pretty well known in Dallas. He had a reputation. as a troublemaker. He was always defiant and all that. So that, and then that he was a leader. People follow him. So that's primarily the reason why.
Yeah.
And he never. Now the thing is that we don't know. We know very, very little about how this was organized, but definitely was extremely well organized. And
did they kill him that night, or he was on the run, or?
No, he was killed that the following day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
And did they rise up against other slaves, thinking that you all were a part of this, and it was a massacre?
Yeah. So they captured slaves throughout the state, but they didn't kill, and they really couldn't prove who of the slaves were involved. They really couldn't prove that. They knew they had to be because there was so much going on. They just don't know exactly who among the slaves was involved. So they didn't blame all the slaves. They just knew that a number of them were involved. But it was all organized in Dallas, Texas, and it came from Kano. And so
as a result of that, what happened? Did they employ some more stringent restrictive laws on enslaves, or?
Oh yeah. It was worse than that. Here's what happened. So let me just end on this. So before I get to that, to answer your question, is that the people that were selected, who were pretty much, some people did, when I say some people, some Black people did know about some of the details, not all the details, and they turned in some Black people that said, oh, so-and-so was involved, so-and-so was involved, the usual situation.
Okay.
And so in Dallas, Texas, they decided to lynch the leaders of this movement. And the person that, of course, Kano was the main culprit. And the reason why we don't know too much about this is because at his hanging, when he was going to be hung, and the Black people were there. They brought them there. They want all the Black people to witness his lynching. They wanted to discourage another uprising.
Right.
And before he was hung, he told the people, he didn't say much. He just told them one simple statement. And the statement was, don't tell them anything. Take it to the grave. That's it. That's all we know, he said.
Oh, okay. So, but then after that happened, what was there something good that came out of that? I mean,
absolutely,
now these enslavers gotta build these houses again, whatever.
Well, yeah, the city had to regroup itself, reorganize, restore, all these damages that took place. But as far as Black people in general, the best thing ever that we could ever imagine took place. So this took place in July 8th of 1860. So angry were these people, when I say people, I'm saying the white people in Texas throughout the entire state. It wasn't just one city. The entire state was absolutely had enough of it. They were completely up to the nose of Black people. They really were angry about them. And it created so much anger that this is when, for the first time, the white people had gotten so rebellious, were upset with the rebellion of Black people, that they wanted to completely get rid of, Lincoln and all these people that were telling them that they should work with these Black people, and these Black people need to be treated like humans and all that kind of stuff. They were so fed up about that. 9 months later, it propelled the United States Civil War.
Okay.
This all came from what happened in July 8th in Dallas, Texas. And the good thing about this is that because of that movement in Dallas, Texas, the impact that it had among the white people in general, of course, Texas, because Texas was the one that felt it the most, but all the white Southerners, what they were, that's it. That was the last straw for them.
No.
And the good thing is that Lincoln won the war.
Yeah, right.
And because of that, if you make the connection between that, you come to recognize that the war of independence for our people from slavery, which really that's basically what took place in Dallas, Texas, with Kano, is what gave us our independence. It didn't come from the Union, President Lincoln, from any of those people, because they weren't even moving on that. It was us who fought that 200-year battle, that war that we fought for 200 years, gave us the ending of slavery. Basically,
yeah, sure.
We freed ourselves.
I love it.
That's the bottom line. We freed ourselves. And the man that gets credit for it is Cato. It was his organization, his strategies and how they implemented that caused what we call today emancipation. But we made it happen. No one wanted to free us. We freed ourselves.
Now so, you had mentioned that there were others like Nat Turner. Now,
yes.
Do you know that story? How long was he alive once he started his crusade before they got to him?
So, yeah, Nat Turner. That's in the 1830s, 1831 when he had his rebellion. They call it. So I don't even know the history of Nat Turner, but I'll run it real quickly because I'm sure you probably know quite a bit. Yeah. So he was born, he was born a slave, and in the year 1800. And when he was born, his mother grabbed him by his legs, should I say, and she was going to slam his head to the wall because she didn't want her son to be born, to live as a slave. And just before his head hits the wall, his father, intervenes, stopping his wife from destroying his son. But that was, the year 1800 when there was no hope for Black people at that point. Right. And he eventually, he was very intelligent, learned to read at an early age when they were, we weren't supposed to learn how to read. Right. But he was a very intelligent person. And he was so well learned when it comes to many things because of his education, self-taught, by the way, all self-taught. Okay. That the master, that, the slave owner depended on him because he did things so extremely well and gave him responsibilities, over many things. And one of the things that the white people decided to do with him was allow him to pastor a church. Okay. This is when Black people had their own churches and, right. White people. So from that, his religious understandings and teachings that he had from the church, he experienced a connection with God. And he said God spoke to him and God told him to rebel against these people and to, but the way God did it wasn't by speaking to him in a voice, but to dreams. And the dreams were that, there were white angels, and they said there were Black angels, and the Black angels were killing the white angels. And the voice telling him that he should do that, exactly what you see. And it was traumatic for him, when he first had that vision, that he encountered. But he had a lot of trouble just pursuing what he felt, what God was telling him, that he had to kill these people. And at first he told God, I don't want to do that. But the visions can continue.
Yeah, sure. Is it noted how many people Nat Turner killed in his crusade?
Yeah, it's like 30 something, 35.
Over how many days?
Just 3 days.
And then they caught him as he was on the run.
Yeah, I think he spent 2 weeks in hiding. just living in the woods, and he just finally just kind of gave, he didn't directly give himself up, but he pretty much allowed himself to be caught. And and then
They cut his
that's
head
how.
off, didn't they, and put it on the stake?
Yeah.
Now all these you doing this research has led you personally to, I don't know, to be a Nat Turner type dude without the violence, as you have told me that you want to develop a nation in America of Black people. Am I right on this?
Yeah, this is exactly what Nat Turner did. This is exactly what Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Cato in 1860, Cato in 1660. This is the same. This is something that has always been part of not all Black people, some Black people, and that's why it's called two nations. They're really two nations. There's some that want a nation, their own separate country, and others that don't. And we've always been divided this way. It's just nothing brand new. The oldest movement of Black people is the one from 1660. It predates civil rights. It predates abolition. It predates any Black movement. That is the very first Black movement of our people since we've been here.
I go back to this question though: Is it a movement of?
Yes, a movement.
We're going to have our own land and we're going to have our own president and government, or is it a movement more so or less than we're looking for more equality in the government that we have?
No, it's the first one. So yeah, it's a country, it's like America's a country, Canada's a country, Mexico's a country. It's a country of our own. Okay. And that's why we're divided, because most of us don't want that. Most of us want the latter, what you mentioned, meaning that they want to improve their relationships within America.
Right.
So, but the minority, people like me, want a country.
Did Cato want a country, or did he want to end slavery?
All of these people wanted a country. All those people that you see with weapons, all of them talk about having their own country. All of them. So let me give you a better perspective. So the Black people that wanted to stay with America and just have a better relationship within this country,
right?
They didn't pick up weapons and fight and kill the white people. They didn't do that because that was not their goal. Their goal was to improve it. People like Harriet Tubman, so for example, Harriet Tubman carried this big weapon with her, but she never intended to use it against white people. She intended to use it to Black people who didn't follow her.
Right.
That's the difference. As opposed to Nat Turner, he used his weapons not against Black people, but against white people. So there's a big distinction between them.
Right.
And when you see these battles, these 200-year battle, this war, they were at war. It's like any other war. The goal is to kill their enemies because they wanted to have their own independent nation. And when you read the history books, you will see them. They say it specifically. They call it different names, but it all means the same thing. Mm-hmm. Promised land is that's the overall term. So, yeah, I'm one of those people. Now, once the war ended and emancipation took place, that movement didn't die. Because in the 1880s, the movement takes a new direction. And it started, the first person that was successful after the war, after that 200-year war, it was a man by the name of Benjamin Singleton.
Oh, okay.
I don't even heard about him.
Oh.
But this man, this is the 1880s, so almost everybody at that time was a former slave.
Right.
So the ones who wanted to improve their relationship with America, the Black people, they were part of the Freedmen's Program. Okay, this is what we call today the Reconstruction period in America.
Right.
And at that time, people who were freedmen a part of the freedmen movement, they got involved doing things like they actually ran for office. They got elected for office.
Right.
That Black people had the right to vote in the South. And the reason they got it, not because they were Black. That's not the reason why they got the right to vote. The reason they got the right to vote is that after the Civil War, the people who lost the war in the South were not allowed to vote.
Right.
They couldn't vote. They couldn't run for office.
Right.
So the only human beings left to run for office at that time were Black people.
Right. I got you.
So they had to let them vote because they didn't trust their white brothers. And eventually they started sending Northerners to move down south to fill that vacancy.
Has there been, and we're going to go to your story shortly, has there been someone prior to you after slavery that had a similar goal of a separate nation in America that got some traction?
Yeah, and that's the gentleman, Benjamin Singleton.
Okay.
That's the first one.
Right.
So the movement,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, his movement was one of the most successful. It was early on in the 1880s, just right after slavery. But I'm showing you what was taking place during that Reconstruction period.
Yeah, right.
That's where you got your Black congressmen were elected, for the first time.
Right.
The Black governors were elected for the first time. But these were people that basically they're Black Americans. They believe in America, they can improve their relationships in America. So that was the Reconstruction. While that was happening, simultaneously was the movement for independence. And they don't talk. The thing is that our movement is always covered, it's always under the rug. They don't really promote it.
Right.
But Benjamin Singleton, it was in the 1880s. He told Black people, if you want independence, you want your own country, come follow me. And at that time, they would go to different places to form a country. It was there was no set place where that promised land would be. So it was always in different locations.
Oh,
and in his case, it was in Kansas. He told Black people to come to Kansas, and they did. And here's the irony. All he did was place billboards in different cities telling them what date, where, and ask them to show up. And they did. And it's recorded in history as the Great Exodus period.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard that one.
Okay, that's led by a man named Benjamin Singleton. Now, we know so much about Benjamin Singleton because what he was doing got the attention of politicians and congressmen in particular. And they sequestered him to come to Congress. And he was he had to explain what he was doing to Congress. And he did, he showed up. And the whole conversation between him and Congress, the reason why we know all the details, because it's all recorded in the Library of Congress.
Sure.
Okay, all the information. And they asked him, what are you doing? What is all this? He explains, I'm building my own country. He's very specific. I'm building my own country. All right. And guess what? He named the country, the one he was building. He called it Canaan. And what is Canaan? Canaan was the land, if you read the Bible, that the Jews took.
Okay.
They took the land of Canaan and called it Israel.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And what is Israel? The promised land. This is
yes.
This is exactly what Kano in 1660 said. The promised land. And they spoke in Kiswahili, and that's Mahali. Right. And this continues, after him came another man named Edward McKay. Same thing he was doing. This went on and on and on. We were, sure, the rest of Black America was involved in the American relationship with Black people, but not this movement. It was still seeking its own nation. And that it just went on. I mean, one leader after another leader They didn't succeed. You know, they got so far, and then they will go to another location with the same, you know, goal to establish a country. So there was some mimicking when it came to I use the term pro-Black Americans,
Sure.
that they liked some of the things that they were coming up with, the ones who wanted their own country. They liked the autonomous of having that power, you know, where you don't have to deal with, you know, KKK and all other stuff. So they made that attempt. They made an attempt to try to build cities too, locations, you know, for themselves. Here's the problem. Every single one that they built, like, for example, the most famous one is Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That's right.
Or even, what's the one in Florida?
Fort Mose, maybe, or something like that.
Redwood, not Redwood, but
Rosewood.
Rosewood, that's it. Rosewood. And there was just so many of them. And every one that the pro-Americans attempted to establish, they all got destroyed. Every one of them.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
But the ones that, the people that follow this independence movement, like Singleton, which was Kansas, McCabe, and Ohio, not a single one of their communities was even touched, not one. And there's a difference why they weren't touched. The last one that they made an attempt was in the year 1920, and that's in California, by name of Allensworth. And they built the city of Allensworth. You can look up the history of the city of Allensworth.
Okay.
And now that one was perhaps the most, and I'm explaining to you why they would never, ever attack. This happened, they built that community a year before Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma got destroyed.
Right.
They got destroyed, not Allensworth. Why did that happen that way? So Allensworth was a, they built a city. He called for Black people to build a city in California, and they did not accept any money from any other people but those who supported the idea of a Black nation. And they started, there was nothing out there but land. That's all there was, nothing but land. So they built from land, they built their own homes, they funded that through their own pockets. They built their own city hall, their own schools, their own hospital, all of this completely self-sustained. And it was the reason we know so much about Allensworth. Again, we're going back to the newspaper.
Okay.
It became national news. Why was it national news? They were so successful that, in particular, the white people were so angry about that this was taking place. They didn't want other Black people to succeed.
Right. So
it hit the newspaper. Back then, the newspapers back in the 1920s, that was like the internet, right? It was like all over. Okay. Sure. And they actually, it angered them so much that the KKK got involved, and they decided, you know, we're going to destroy that city. And they were all agreeing. You read all the newspapers of all these these white people's newspapers around the country. And the KKK came up with a date, and they published that on this day, we're going to show up and we're going to destroy the city of Allensworth. Well, here's the reason why it did not get destroyed. It just so happened that Allensworth, the man who started this city, was a former lieutenant colonel of the United States Army. And guess who his battalion was? The Buffalo Soldiers. Okay.
So when they came to attack, they were ready to fight them off.
Yeah, they heard. I mean, they were watching the newspapers. You know, they said they were going to go attack our colonel, Allensworth. So guess what? The Buffalo Soldiers came to help the lieutenant colonel. By the way, he was a retired lieutenant colonel at that time. Okay. And so the day came, Buffalo Soldiers were waiting. The KKK never showed up. All right. So this is all recorded history. This is all over their newspapers. And a year later, they destroy Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah. When you use the term a nation within a nation.
No, I never said a nation with a nation. That's a term that's a term by people who are not part of this movement. They use that term. That term doesn't show up till the Nation of Islam shows up. They've never, since the days of 1660, there has never been a term that they've used. It's a country, just like any other country.
So it's a country within America.
I'm sorry?
A country within America.
No, that's a concept created in the 1940s. So you can walk in America. From America, you can walk to Canada. From America, you can walk to Mexico. It's really one piece of land. It's just politically divided. The borders are political, the borders, right?
Right.
So no one would ever confuse Mexico as America or Canada, same thing.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
So our states may border the United States, but they're not part of the United States. No difference in Mexico or Canada. Same thing. And the states are Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Those three states.
Right.
It would border America and even Mexico. Well, not really Mexico, but well, it's basically America. So basically, that concept that these terms, and I'm glad you bring up these terms because something happened in the 20th century, early, like mid 20th century, that all those ideas kind of all, discombobulated. That's my term, but basically, it's between 1660 and 18, and even to 1920, everyone understood what a nation was, and no one was misunderstood it. And because it's all connected to that 200-year war, and then the efforts that came after that, once they gained their independence, they were no longer slaves. They can now pursue this matter through politics and economics, and that's always been the goal. So we follow that. When I say we, this is my belief. I share the same belief. Many Black people share this belief. I didn't know how many Black people would even assume that they would want to have their own country. I don't even know what the number was. I heard leaders talk about that, but they never gave us anything specific. I conducted a poll that turned out to be a national poll, and the results was that 35% of all Black people in America would prefer to have their own country, meaning that the vast majority, 2/3 of all Black people in America, reject the idea. And there's no right or wrong, it's preference. So this movement that has been going on, back from like I mentioned, since 1660, we don't know what the numbers were, in terms of how percentage that supported or rejected it. But clearly there were always a minority. They have always been a minority. It's never been a majority.
Let me stop you there. So this is what you want to do. You want to lead
I am leading a movement. I am leading
a formation of a country.
I'm leading a movement to form our own country. Yes, I started this movement, and we're using the political process. And so what I mean by political process, we attained this nation through politics. Now, you're gonna say, how's that even possible? Well, I'm not creating this. This is something that already exists. So in Africa, I know I'm jumping to a different continent now, but just give you some connection here. In Africa, when they were colonized by European countries, the first African nation to decolonize itself from Europe was Ghana. The man that did it was Kwame Nkrumah. And when you read about him, he said, how did he do that?
Okay.
Well, he started a political party. He got elected as president, and he decolonized the country without any military battles.
Okay, let me stop you there. So is your movement, does it have a title, a name, or organization?
It's a good question. So to do this politically, we had to start our own political party. And that's what I did. I formed a political party, established it. And what did we call the party? We called it what we called it in 1660, Promised Land, but the Kiswahili word, which is Mahali.
Okay.
So we called the Mahali Party.
And is there a particular, for lack of a better word, city, state that you focus on initially, or is it across America, or?
No, our goal is to form the country in 3 states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, those 3 states. So in 2023, which was next month, we are running candidates for office in those 3 states. And the goal is to acquire, over the election cycles, meaning every year there's elections, to acquire positions to take over, be the political majority in those 3 states when it comes to politics to attain our nation.
What are they running for governor or
yes,
on statewide offices and that kind of thing?
Whatever office is happening at that year, we run for it.
Is there some ideologies that you all have other than the separate country as the focus point? Like
our platform.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we do have a website, the mahaliparty.org. You can check it out.
It's called what now?
It's just by the party name, Mahali Party.
Mahali?
Yeah, Mahali. Mahali.
Okay.
Mahaliparty.org. That's the website. And the platform is there. So the key things that we're looking for, even though we don't have a country yet, we're pursuing that country. And our goal is to govern in those states until we become a country. And meaning that, our main process is, so we are competing against 3 parties, right? 2 other parties, Republicans and Democrats in America.
Sure.
But primarily when it comes to Black people, it's Democrat.
Yeah.
So we basically are showing our people that even though we don't have a nation, we are self-governing. So we have a whole different way of politics than you find in the Democratic Party. Democratic Party is a party where Black people are subservient and they follow a big party. It's not the Democratic Party wasn't founded by Black people; it was founded by white people.
Yeah, right.
And the majority of the people in the party is white.
Right.
So they're a tiny minority, and they have to follow other people. On the contrary, the Mahali Party is our party. We established the party, so we don't have to follow. We lead, meaning that, giving point.
Yeah.
In 2020, well, right now, this is a possibility we may have a candidate running in Virginia. We're looking for a candidate in Virginia because one of the Black Caucus members died about, 2 weeks ago. So there's going to be there's going to be a special election to fill that vacancy.
Okay.
And it's in a Black district, so we want to run a candidate there. So we're looking for a candidate in Virginia to run with our party. So
have you had a candidate run so far?
Yeah, we had one. Yeah, we just finished a campaign in New Jersey. We have a candidate, and of course he didn't win, but that was his first time running. He ran for Congress, U.S. Congress, in New Jersey. And this gentleman, by the way, he doesn't support the idea of having our own nation. I mean, he doesn't want one for himself, but he thinks Black people should have that right if that's what they want. So we share views. The reason he ran with our party is because he is anti-abortion, and so he couldn't do that with Democratic Party.
What? But if you're focusing in on those 3 states and he's in Virginia, how would he help you with that focus in those states?
Easy, because every state, every Congress. So the way government functions according to the United States Constitution, there are only 2 governments that are recognized in America. One is the federal government, and the other is the state. Okay, and that's important because when it comes to forming a country, you got to have allegiance with as many states as possible when I say allegiance, people that are not going to be like antagonistic to your country.
But you've had people run in those 3 states that you're focusing on.
Right. And next year, 2023.
Oh, okay.
The election cycle starts, it's in 2023 over there in those 3 states.
If in the ideal scenario, when do you project maybe to accomplish some goal?
Okay, fantastic.
That kind of thing.
Very great question. I love that question. Okay, so here's the thing: we wanted to form a country, and we took. We did a lot of analysis before we even got to where we are. First thing is finding out who even wants it, and that survey showed us 35%. What is that number? So based on that number, we got to figure out. Okay, so how do we do this? And the big question coming up, well, it's going to take us forever. I said, no, it's not going to take us forever. This one guy started a party in 10 years to create a country. So that's our deadline, 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Right now we're 2 into it, so 8 years from now.
I love
8
it.
years. Yeah, and it's all done politically. It's not done through any weapons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a flag or?
Yes, we do. It's on the website. It's on the website. Yeah.
Well, what do you all have a conference?
A conference?
Yeah. Do you all meet collectively in some city that talk about strategy and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Yes, we do.
Is there how do people they go? Tell us your website again. How do people help you?
To go to the website, mahaliparty.org, MAHALI, Mahali. That's the Kiswahili word from Promised Land. Mahaliparty.org. You go to the website there, and it'll tell you what our platform is. So our platform changes every year because every year we have different elections. So right now, when you go to the website, you're going to be looking at the 2022 platform. 2023 it'll be different because there's all different election cycles. So according to the cycle, you're going to see the platform. So we are pro-life, we're not pro-abortion. So these are some of the things that our party stands for, because we believe in building a nation, and if we're pro-abortion, we'll never grow. And of course, we understand that abortions really is a program created by basically KKK people who are trying to keep the Black population as low as possible. So we're against that. We in 2021, our platform was based on ending police killing our people. That's something that was never in the Democratic Party's website.
Sure.
on their platform. So they're okay with Black people being killed by the police.
Yeah, I got you there. So as we come to a close, is there a motto that you have? A saying?
Absolutely.
That closes out.
Absolutely. So rather than go to the government to get what you want, become the government. Okay. So we don't ask. If you are in control, you don't have to ask anyone to give you anything like reparations or anything like that. You control it.
Okay.
With a small number of people in Congress from our party, it's easy for us to get reparations because we don't have to vote with the Democratic Party. We can vote with the Republican. Whoever agrees with us, we'll vote for them, with them, to get what we want. So I want to end with this here, because I know your time is coming to an end here.
Sure.
This is something that you can never do as a Black Democrat, is go against your own party. And your party doesn't want to give you reparations. So all it takes to do that, join the Mahali Party, run through our party, We have our own delegation, our own group in Washington from the Mahali Party. And the day is going to come when either party, no matter who it is, Republican, Democrat, we're going to leverage our votes. They can say, hey, man, we need help. We're short, 2 or 3 votes. Can you guys vote for us? The answer will always be yes, yes, yes. We'll give you whatever you want. But our votes are not free, like the Black Democrats.
Sure.
We don't have free votes. If we vote for you, this is what we want in return. And if you don't give it to us, we're not going to vote for you, or we're going to vote against you. And it's not based on promise. So they say, okay, we want this, whatever the bill, we want to pass this bill. Okay, great. Add reparations to it. And this is how much we want for reparations. And they have to sign on that bill with our reparation amendment to whatever bill they want.
Okay. Lastly, is this your idea? You came up with this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you a big guy. You
And I'm not that big. I'm kind of short.
Yeah, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If this goes through, you go down in history.
We want our own country, period. And we can do it.
I love it. It's a noble effort. Everybody is strong inspirations. I tell you, I bring it to you. He found me, I found him, and I got the head man. He say short, but he's a big guy because he's got big dreams, big ambitions, big goals. And it's to help people out. That I'm sure that's the premise of it. To help, and in particular, Black people. That's the premise of it. He read something and it moved him to spend your time in your life doing this, your life's mission. Incredible. Hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. Hit the like button on this video. I know you liked it. It made you think. Hit the notifications bell. Tell somebody about us. We bringing it to you from all angles. Straight, no chaser. And to you, my brother, I say this, and I mean this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing. Because as I just said, it's a very noble effort. And it has some possibilities, no question. And if you don't shoot, you can't make it. If you're not in the game, you can't win. If you don't play, you can't win. And here we are. And you've been doing it for a couple years now, and I'm sure it took you some years prior to that to get to this point.
Absolutely.
So you committed and you know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Good thing. It's been my pleasure. With that, I'll say bye-bye. We out. Thank you.
All right. Good day. Thank you.